So for today, we're talking about the Quadratics B review, and it's the harder part of Quadratics. Like, do you remember how to find vertex form out of this with complete the square? Do it. The research shows. You'll remember this better if I make you try it before I just show you. First thing you do is leave yourself some space. Second thing you do is half of this and then square it. Half of 8 is 4. 4 squared is 16. This one will always be positive because you just squared it. And this will be your minus 16 because it needs to be canceled to keep your equation the same as it was. But factored. That part will factor. X minus 4, there's a minus in the problem, right? So there has to be a minus in your answer. And I could write another x minus 4, but I'm just going to say squared. And together these make minus 4. Did I do that right? Okay. Would you agree that I now have the vertex? The vertex is really handy for lots of things. It's like, if you know the vertex is at 4, 4, or 4, negative 4, vertex is down there, and you know it's right side up because there's no negative, then you instantly would be able to get the domain and range. That's on there a lot. Domain and range is on your test so many times. So let's just make sure you got this. What's the domain and range of this thing? Take a second. Write down the domain. Write down your range. I would do these with intervals. But you can do the all reals but not thing, but it's kind of tricky. Domain is left to right. It goes forever from left to right. The range is how low to how high, and this one's how low it is. And there's a bracket. Did you remember the bracket? Raise your hand if you did. Okay, good. Okay. So that's not too hard. This one's harder. Why? Do you know how to factor out a negative? Do that, but only on the first two terms. A lot of people get this twisted. They think that you're going to factor out of that one too. No, that one just moves over. A ton of you made that mistake on the test. I've told you since the beginning to take the last number and move it over. That's why. So when you factor out the negative 1, it only hits the first two. You get what I mean? It'd be tempting to factor it out of that 27. You do not. You moved it over. You're not messing with it. What's half of 12? 6. 6 squared? 36. Negative 36. Y equals negative 1. Oh, apparently this is an upside down parabola. X is all pluses, so it must be plus. X plus square root of 36 is 6. I could say x plus 6 and x plus 6. Rather say squared. And I'm going to make a mistake on purpose, negative 63, and that's going to happen so many times. What did I do wrong? Onwishan.
You have to factor in the negative 1 that you took out earlier.
Do you remember that this is going to hit this? So it also has to hit this. Whatever you factored out has to be multiplied right there. A ton of you did that wrong on the actual test. Why? Well, because now this one's going to turn into negative 36, so this one needs to turn into positive 36 to counteract it. So then that's really going to be positive 36 minus 27. Please help me. What's that?
6.
Plus 9? How many said 9? Raise your hand if you did. That's a lot of 9s. Somebody says 6, but he's also balancing a pencil on his nose. So, all right. Now, why do we do this again? Because you want to find the vertex. And the vertex is 6, 9. No, it's not. What is it? Negative 6, 9. All right, good. Okay, so there's hard, complete the square. This one's another hard complete square, but if I do all of them, you won't have a chance to try it. Okay, so you should try that. This one, you'd factor out the -3, and even though the 9 has one, you would not do that. You would move it over. If you're doing complete the square anyway, if you're doing complete the square, don't touch the last number. All right. Let's talk about minimum and maximum. If you just look at a sketch of it, do you get that that's a maximum? It's the highest it goes. And if it looks like this, then it's a minimum. And you can tell if the number has a negative in front. I gave him a name, the only human name for the whole semester. What was his name? Max, because that would have a maximum. Because if it's an upside down parabola, it'll be a maximum. So I said, remember this guy's name is Max. All right. Let's move on. This page. Calculate the discriminant. I don't even know what the discriminant is. Actually, I do, but I'm a math teacher. Do you? All right, let's take a second and everybody write out the quadratic formula. X equals -b plus minus square root. I'm changing colors for this part for some reason. All over 2a. And there is the quadratic formula. And that red part is called the discriminant. Notice you do not square root the discriminant. If I ask for this discriminant, you just do b squared minus 4ac. You don't square root it. If you just want the discriminant, it's a number. It's not the square root of a number. So let's do one. Here's a really easy one. X squared plus 2x plus 1. Do the discriminant, and it should tell you how many answers you're going to have. Do you remember this deal? If it comes out positive, then you get this answers. If it comes out negative, there won't be any answers. And it was either positive or negative, or what's the third case? 0. Something can be positive or negative or 0. All right, so here's this process. You go, okay, they asked for discriminant. I'm doing b squared minus 4ac. I'm going to stick in parentheses wherever there was variables. And I'm going to stick in b was 2. A was 1. C was 1. 2 squared is 4 minus 4. Huh, what's that equal to? 0. Now there's 3 things that could happen. What just went on right here is that was 0. Do you get it's going to cancel all of that out? Like all of this will cancel out. And you'll be left with negative b over 2a, which is the way you find the vertex. You see how that kind of goes together? If you got a 0 discriminant, that meant this was 0. That meant all of this doesn't matter. That meant you're doing a vertex question. So, if you need to, write down the 3 cases. If the discriminant's positive, you get 2 solutions. Some of you guys are going to want to look at this right before the test, because this is one of those things that's really easy to forget. The discriminant's negative, like less than 0. There aren't any solutions. No real solutions. And the only other thing is, if the discriminant is 0, then it's special. It's like this, where that's going to drop out, leaving you with this, which is a hint that it's the vertex. 1 solution vertex. So there's the discriminant. That's the discriminant. We call it D. If D is positive, you get 2. If D is negative, you get none. If D is equal to 0, you get 1 solution, and it's the vertex. That's very messy, but it says vertex. All right. Do you get that they just want the discriminant and how many solutions? They didn't ask you to find the solutions. So if you do the discriminant and it comes out to like -10, you'd say, oh, there's no real x-intercepts then. If you do the discriminant and it comes out to +10, then you'd say there's 2 solutions. If you do the discriminant and it comes out to 0, how many solutions do you have? 1. And it's the vertex. Good. All right. Next part. Pro tip. If they ever say simplified radical form, that means you have to have square roots in the answer. That means it's the quadratic formula. Because if you factored it, if you could factor it, there wouldn't be any square roots. You You just get nice clean number answers. So this one doesn't factor in, therefore quadratic formula. I've got to trust that you know how to do the quadratic formula. If you don't, you can always walk up and ask. Go back to an old video. All right, next kind. This is just melts people's brains. They're like, I don't know if I should factor it or what I should even do. Should I like square root it? No, you shouldn't square root it. Because you could subtract 15, and if you're going to do it that way, then you've just set it equal to 0. And is that a good thing for a quadratic to be equal to 0? Yes, it is. Because you just have set the y equal to 0. You're finding the x-intercepts. Then, if you can factor it, you should. This one looks like it'd be a real pain to factor, so I'd probably just go right to the quadratic formula. Quadratic formula solves them all. That's a powerful statement. Do you get there's lots of quadratics on the test? The quadratic formula solves all of them. It's just sometimes it's a pain. And you'd rather factor it. Because if like, I could just add 4 here, because you want it to equal 0, right? I would always look and see if you can factor it. Because if you can, you're skipping a 16-part formula. But in this case, you can't. It won't work. You try it, it won't work. Then you go to the quadratic formula. All right. What does this mean? I'm going to give you an example. Hi there. I'm going to pause for just a second. So this thing says simplified radical form. I want to warn you, there's something like this on the test, and kids generally suck at it. So let's practice it. Can you simplify that down? I know you might be like, but I just use a decimal. Then it wouldn't be in simplified radical form. You can't just use a decimal. You got to know how to simplify it. Seiji, do you know how to break up the square root of 8 into 2 square roots?
Square root of 4, root of 2.
Nice, and then what?
Root of 4, bottom of 2,
2 root 2, nice. Now I'm going to take a second and just clean it up. Did you guys get 2 root 2 for that? Okay. That's one step, and some kids don't know how to do that, so they get knocked out. It's kind of like, I don't know, like Simon Says or something. You just lost a bunch of kids that wouldn't know how to do that. In here, in honors, most kids know how to do that. But a lot of people don't know how to do the next thing. Try it. Let's see if you're in the top half of the class. Would you agree? I just effectively said this is really hard because only I think half of you are going to get it right. What did I also say about things that are really hard? It almost always comes down to factoring. And that factors. And you take a 2 out. You factor the 2 out. And you factor the 4 into 2 times 2. Do you get how that is factoring? And the 2 factored out, if you don't know how to get these numbers, divide this by 2 and divide that by 2. Try it. Who, before I said it, had 1 plus minus root 2 in there. Okay, awesome. And then some kids left it without canceling the final 2. You got to cancel that. And there's your final answer. That's called simplified radical form. For sure, final. Okay. What about decimal form? Well, then you just take this and you figure out what the square root of 2 is. Well, let's say it's like 1.63 or something. And then you do 1 plus that, divide by 2, and then 1 minus that, and divide by 2. Just be careful that you do the whole top and hit enter first. Because it's a classic mistake for a kid to go 1 plus square root 2 divided by 2, and your calculator says, sure, I'll divide these 2 first, and then add 1. You know what I mean? If you just type this into your calculator the way you see it, your calculator is going to screw up the order because it's going to do the divide first. So finish the top, get the decimal, then divide by 2. Okay. Don't do it that way. All right, how many solutions does this one have? It's an easy question, don't overthink it. 2. Those are the solutions. How many solutions does this one have? None. How many solutions does this one have? And it's the vertex. All right. Now, discriminant, that's the D is standing for discriminant. I just gave you those a second ago. If you've got a short-term memory or notes, you should be able to answer that. And on to the last page. Word problems. Please draw what I just drew. A projectile has to start at a certain height. It could be on the ground. That'd be at 0, 0. Or it could be off the ground here. Let's say I'm 2 meters up when I threw it. And then it goes up in the air and then it comes down. I know you know the name of that spot. What is it? The vertex. But what's the formula for getting the vertex? I told you yesterday. Do you remember? Negative b over 2a is a good start. Comma f of whatever you just got. Why can't you just do negative b over 2a? Because then it's finding the axis of symmetry. That's the line, the x equals line that goes down the middle. Okay. And what formula would you want for that spot? Isn't this a quadratic? Isn't this where the solution of the quadratic is? So how about maybe the quadratic formula? All right. This is when it hit the ground. It's not how far away it is. It's when it hit the ground. All right, 2 other questions we can ask you. Not just when did the ball get to the highest, that would be the vertex. The vertex would tell you the time and how high it was. Not just this, that's when the ball hit the ground. There's 2 more things we could ask. One is, can you write me the equation for this? Do you remember how it always starts? And we should, how's it always start?
It starts with negative 4.9 e squared.
Do you have to memorize that? Yes. Yes, this is honors. We don't give you all the formulas. Maybe you should write it down right now. And then you put in the speed. What's the speed they're launching at? It's not negative. 31.8. And that needs a t. And the last number is just a number, and it's how high you started at, which is what? 50 meters high. That's where you started, is 50 meters high. Now, where'd you get the 2? I'm a little curious about that.
Graph that you made.
Oh, a previous graph. Okay. I see what you're saying. I was just saying that this was a number, and I said maybe it's 2. So, I actually now know that it's 30. When did the ball hit the ground? I don't know. I'd have to use the quadratic formula to find it. And remember, you get 2 answers, and one of them is negative. Is there such a thing as negative time? No. So when you do this formula and you get one answer that's negative, you can't freak out. You just go, oh, it's not that one. It's the other answer over here. All right. Last thing. If I told you at time, you'd put it here. Where is the ball at time 2? That's so easy. You just stick it here. All right. But if I told you a height, when is the ball at 12 meters off the ground? You'd have to put it here. That's where the heights go. And a lot of people get stumped and they're like, how am I supposed to solve it? And then they go and put in this for A and this for B and this for C, and they act like that isn't even there. Well, if there's a 12 there, you can't use that A, B, and C. Do you remember you have to subtract 12 to get it out of there, and then you can do the quadratic formula? That is about as intense as they get. All right, so you have one, there's three Schoology quizzes. Only one of them says formative after it, so that's the only one you have to do. Most of you have been really good about keeping doing your review. It counts in homework. It also makes you smarter for the final. It makes total sense. So just keep doing it. So, do you have any last questions for me? Yes?
For the final, do we get like a piece of paper?
No, not in this class. You may have overheard me talking about that. There's a chance that the regular, in a different class, not honors, that there might be a note card, but not in this class. There's no note card for sure. Yes?
There's no calculators, is there?
Good question. There is calculators. Now, this is important. When there's a calculator, some people think that means they don't have to show work. No, you still have to tell me what you did on the calculator, okay? And number two, do you get, substitutes don't come with like 10 calculators. It's extremely likely that he's not going to have a calculator for you. Be honest, how many of you have one with you right now? Okay, so you'll be fine. If you don't, I would put a big blue star in the back of your hand or something to remind yourself to get a calculator. Because otherwise you have to beg somebody who finished to borrow theirs at the very end of the hour. There will be somebody, because it's a final and the finals are really long. I mean, it's the therefore. Somebody will finish with 20 minutes left because there's like 2 hours to do it. So somebody will finish 20 minutes early, but you got to be like, please, can I use your calculator? So bring your own calculator. All right. Good questions. All right. That's all I got for you for today.